Welcome to Web Handling. My name is Dave Roysum. I am super excited to continue our new mini-series on working with operators. In this clip, we will explore just a few of the many ways that operators can misbehave. Here I share several misbehaviors that I've personally witnessed, often several or many times, and each one of which I've learned from. So what do we mean by operator misbehavior? Well, this could be anything from poor attitude to poor judgment or even poor morals. The results are predictable and in many cases preventable. That is, increased waste, delay, and customer complaints. However, it's not uncommon for at least some of these cases to be largely caused by poor training and or poor guidance, and thus is more a failure of management than a failure of operators. Let me share a story of the latter. I was once called upon to help with a wrinkling problem on a very common type of slitter rewinder. As always, I looked to the operator to help narrow the search. So, after introductions and small talk, I asked him, where do the wrinkles start? He said, on the rubber tube. I had no idea what he was referring to, so I asked him to show me where the rubber tube was. He went over to a catwalk, opened it up, and pointed to a bowed roller spreader, which of course had a rubber tube on it. What this clearly shows is a converting plant who has so distanced themselves from technology and training that this operator, and indeed most of them in the plant, did not even know the names of the parts of their machines anymore. This is not a matter of observation or attitude or intelligence. This operator checked all of those boxes. It was because he was trained by the previous operator who only told them about 80% of what he knew, and the new operator only understood about half of that because he'd never seen a machine like this before. That process had continued for several short generations, and before you knew it, the crew were functional idiots. Though actually in this specific case, it was management who were the functional idiots. Of course, the collective area of operator misbehaviors is far too big to cover in this short clip. Any manager, especially human resource directors, could share hundreds of horror stories of employee misbehavior of a widely varying character. Here, all I can do is share a few interesting personal stories that are mostly related to web handling and that we can all learn from. This next example is so common that all of you would have experienced it at one time or another, if not many times. It is something that I also cover in my industrial problem solving course. It goes something like this. An operator is asked, why are you running so slow? And they say something like, do you want it fast or do you want it good? The source of this idea is likely one of two fallacies. The first is the fallacy of the general rule. That is, even if sometimes waste and delay get worse with speed, that is not necessarily always the case. In fact, in web handling, there are very few speed-related defects, and they are all well known. First is error entrainment increases with speed, and that subject and remedies are covered in chapter-length detail in our new book. Second, vibration increases with speed, and that is a subject that deserves its own book, though you will find a bit of it in the literature. Allow me to digress with a brief note on brittle web breaks, as it's very common in paper and a few other web products. Perhaps surprisingly, most web breaks are not very speed sensitive. Rather, the defect rate remains roughly similar at high speeds. But, and it's a big but, the resulting mess is bigger at higher speeds. Thus, operators have some valid point that you might want to consider slowing down a bit when you are troubled with web breaks, similar to slowing down a car when the road is extremely rough. However, the better response would be to troubleshoot the web breaks by going to school on them, or in the case of cars, repave the road. In fact, some of the most common troubles, like wrinkling, actually get better as speed increases. So in this first case of the general rule, the operator may be well-meaning, but perhaps not well-informed. Now on to the second common reason for the speed myth and others. That is, the fallacy of the false dilemma. Here, the operator is setting you up with two bad choices. Yet, do not be so unwaried as to accept either of those two bad choices without a thorough study. Perhaps good and fast is the most appropriate response of all. There are many ways that you might evaluate your operator. As a rewinder expert, I can easily see how proficient operators are in moving about their machine. It can be as simple as noting every single activity performed between sets. Any activity not directly related to getting the machine up and running, good product, should be deferred until they're running. I teach time cycle analysis in my advanced winding class, and that should inform measured productivity improvements on this most common machine. Also, I teach in the slitting section of my award-winning and trademark Web 101 class that you merely need to look at used slitter blade piles to see how good the operators are, how good maintenance is, and even how good management is. Still, these techniques require a bit of experience and expertise. Instead, a more common approach is to see whether one shift performs better than another. However, unless these are rotating shifts, you may not be able to make a useful conclusion. As I teach in the plant biorhythms section of my industrial problem-solving class, night shifts can perform poorer due to a lack of supervision or lack of resources such as maintenance, or human biorhythms, or poor night shift crew. It would be difficult to tell which is which. However, if the day shift is performing poor, it's almost always due to meddling of engineers or management. Thus, as I teach in the advanced section of my class, you can use certain defects that only operators can make, even though they're rare. Things like setting up the slitters and cutting the wrong width is just one example. There are others. However, even then you must take care. Sometimes it's a management problem in disguise, such as having poor lighting in the slitter section so that reading a tape measure is made unnecessarily challenging and less reliable. Alternatively, operators could be overwhelmed by product coming at them at rates faster than their ailing machine can keep up with. Let me just share a few more insights. Lead operators should teach as well as lead. Training the next generation is part of everyone's job. That includes operators as well. Yes, not everyone is a great teacher, even if they are otherwise skillful in what they do. Still, that does not excuse the lead operator who reads all the readouts, dials all the dials, and fills out all the forms. Formal training, preferably from the outside so it's not become inbred, can be helpful for almost every position. However, as much as I love and respect and learn from operators, a class of only operators may not always go so well. They may misbehave like they did when they were teenagers in an algebra class. There is an easy fix, and that is to include engineers and management in the training as well. Every one of us loses motivation from time to time, hopefully only for a brief time. If motivation flags for a while, some intervention may be needed by coworkers and/or managers. While this is beyond my skills, it is pretty clear that expectation should be clear and the source of the issue sought out. At the risk of repeating myself from the last week's show, however, before you ask anything of anyone, make sure you try to do something for them first. Engineers can greatly improve relations with operators and learn more from them by merely starting with respect. You are in the operator's territory, so don't barge in without first explaining what you want and why you want it, and then asking the operator for their thoughts and listening quite closely without interruption. It is common that engineers will disrupt production, especially during trials. Be fair and log any resulting waste and delay to trial work rather than against the operator's performance metrics. If you make a mess, offer to clean it up. Of course, the operator may decline simply as a matter of pride, but more likely you will just get in their way. Still, make the offer anyway. Also, bring in donuts and other morning treats prior to the trial. If the trial is long or troublesome, bring free pizza for lunch. Finally, of course, management has much to learn about operators, but that will have to wait till the next clip. There are 3 starting points for a more detailed discussion of problem solving. The first is my industrial problem solving book that has a good companion to my industrial problem solving course of the same name. The second is the must-have 750-page Web Handling Handbook written by myself, Tim Walker, and Dr. Dylan Jones. This is where you would turn for the sciences of web handling, which then can guide you in more effective problem solving by not having to reinvent the wheel. The caution here is that science is never complete and sometimes not even correct, at least for some odd situations as we've just seen in these stories. Last but not least is my award-winning and trademarked Web 101 class that has been taken by 5,000 people just like you. Here you will learn about web handling, winding, common converting operations like slitting, as well as a good sprinkling of problem-solving techniques. Thank you so very much for joining me in this mini-series on working with operators. Stay tuned for the next clip where we will talk about bad bosses and how they can wreck operating morale. If you have a topic you would like to hear about, let me know in the comment section below. If you found anything interesting or useful here, please like and share and subscribe. See you next time.